I ordered some science candy from Japan for my daughter.
Is this candy made out of science?
Let's say yes.
Okay.
It's like slime candy.
Ooh, wait. Hang on. I'm not sure. I'm trying to moderate my reaction here. maybe go on.
It's a little bit of ooh and a little bit of ugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it uses. Well, I don't know how the particular one we got does, but you combine these. They give you like 4 or 5 packets of stuff, and some of them are flavors, and some of them are like sodium alginate and stuff like that. And then you add those things to water in specific orders, and then you combine them and stir them all up. And when you combine them all together, it like fluffs up and gets into like it's almost like a YouTube slime.
I was going to ask if there's any Elmer's glue in there. I mean, it is safe to eat.
You do not eat Elmer's glue. Right? It's non-toxic, but don't eat it.
Okay.
It's so we did one, like I ordered from Japan. It took forever to get here because Japan, and it comes with like the little tray, the little presentation tray. You like open it up and you pour the powders in, you put the right amount of water and you stir everything all up. But it was interesting because it completely changed textures. Each thing that you added changed the texture a little bit more, and then when you got to the end, it was like. It looked like the alien mucus from like an alien movie, right? Like you could touch it with your finger and it would just pull up like a foot.
I think I'm moving more toward the category.
It tasted like the inside of a Zot.
What is a what?
Have you never had a Zot?
What is a Zot?
I don't know. Zot's a movie theater candy. It's like it's like a gumdrop thing with some goo inside, and the goo is all sour. They're pretty good. I would recommend a Zot.
So candy made out of chemicals, huh? Is there any dihydrogen oxide in there?
I believe that there was the dihydrogen oxide, Brad.
Great. Speaking of ordering things from overseas, I ordered a Pine Sol.
Ooh, did you get a V2 or V1?
Well, God, I hope it's the V2. So I ordered it directly from the Pine 64 store.
Oh.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is that it's shipped directly from Shenzhen.
Oh, you're going to be able to smell that factory in the box when you open it.
Well, possibly, but it's been a while. I ordered it at the beginning of the month and it's still not here. I think it's finally coming Monday, but the tracking was all in Chinese. So I had a kind of an amusing experience of day by day pasting Chinese into Google Translate to find out what the tracking, but I was kind of shocked how well it worked. Like the Google Translate has gotten very good.
So the thing that amazes, so I was able to use Google Translate on the Japanese instructions on the back of the box. And then my daughter was just like, hey, Dad, there's probably a YouTube video of somebody doing this. I was like, oh, right. And there indeed was. The thing that I liked about getting the overseas package is that they drop shipped it to Knoxville, Tennessee. And then somebody in Knoxville unpackaged a bazillion boxes. And then it was here like the next day, which was really surprising. The weird thing is that the shipper that they used to go from Japan to Hong Kong to Knoxville, the acronym at the beginning was DSL. And when I Googled that, because normally I just don't Google, by the way, it was a lot of pornography came up, is what I'll say.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Of course. Let's move on.
I did not think about that. I was surprised. Well, maybe we'll cut this part out. I don't know.
It's too late. It's not. This tracking service was this shipping service was 17 tracks, so I think maybe a little safer for work. Also, I'm an idiot. I forgot you can just right click a page in Chrome and
wait, what?
Click translate. You don't have to go to Google Translate and paste text in anymore.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God, really?
No, that's amazing. Well, I don't use Chrome. I use Firefox.
Oh, well, maybe they've got it. I don't know. Anyway, I'm on the 17 track page and I just translated all of the tracking into English. Los Angeles, arrive at the place of destination. That's a perfectly serviceable translation.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Other than this shit kind of taking a while, like I'd kind of hoped to get it faster than a month or 3 weeks. It was kind of cool engaging with shipping tracking from another country.
Well, I've bought like cheap keyboard switches and stuff from AliExpress before, and it comes the same way. It's like they bundle up a whole pallet of stuff. And then or a container, and then the container gets packaged when it gets to LA or Tennessee or someplace.
Oh, I wonder if the main reason for the delay is that it sat on the 7th was the last update, and it sat for 10 days with no updates.
Probably was waiting for the boat to arrive or get unloaded or loaded or whatever.
There's mention of airline in here, so it did fly.
Okay.
But yeah, on the 7th it said Shenzhen delivered to the carrier for transportation, and then it sat for 10 days before it left. And I bet that's what it was. They were accumulating stuff and sending it all at once.
I have a friend who does shipping logistics stuff, and she always tells me stories about how the different, like, I mean, she does boat stuff, not planes, but like they can load container ships in like 12 hours or something like that, like thousands upon thousands of containers. And then when you get those off, it becomes a logistics problem of getting the like figuring out which ones go to the sub distributors. Some of the, like, UPS does this, I think it's called, I can't remember what it's called, but they do a thing where they bundle like stuff coming directly out of the factory in China, and they'll put the box, like this is what Apple does. So they'll send a whole pallet of stuff with the labels on it, like a pallet that's wrapped packages ready to go that have already cleared customs, because, you know, it's Apple and they can do that. And they just have to hit they crack open that label and it just dumps into a UPS bin, and then your iPhone comes, or your watch, or whatever the new thing is. Yeah,
my MacBook Pro last year also shipped straight from the factory like that. That's insanely efficient. That's cool. Last thing I'll say, we should start this episode. How many ship containers do you think have been lost at sea?
Oh, bazillions. Do you know about the Garfield phones?
Yes.
Garfield phone's classic example. A shipping container fell off a boat outside of France, and there's a beach where just thousands of Garfield phones have washed up over the years.
There's some amazingly like elegant photography of a beach full of Garfield phones out there that looks like it might as well have been AI generated for how surreal it is.
It's kind of sad. There's a ton. Well, there was a fantastic story in Wired probably 10 years ago about a car container that like capsized, and the cars got wet. So it's $1 billion worth of cars or something on it.
Oh my God.
And they had to scrap all the cars, but then they also had to dismantle the story of how they had to dismantle the boat with the cars on it, where it was run aground or whatever happened to it is harrowing and very, very good. It's still on Wired site. I'm sure it's worth looking for. I think it was a Hyundai car carrier, or Nissan maybe.
That stuff is wild and kind of haunting to think about. Think about how many MacBook Pros are down there at the bottom of the ocean. Maybe we should start doing some diving.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
My voice cracked. I'm 13.
Whoa.
I know.
Can you do it again?
No.
Welcome to the Tech Pod.
Welcome. I'm Will. We're glad to have you here. I'm really excited to do a podcast with my friend Brad.
There's something very Simpsons-like about this nerdy voice.
These are old men doing young people voices. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about this week, Brad? What do we got?
Computers. Have you heard of them?
Technology, eh?
Uh-huh. Yes. Personal. They make computers for individual people now. They are personalized.
Wait, what? I'm a Vax life over here, man. Nothing but shared terminals. Give me that TS100.
Oh, that kind of Vax. I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah. Vax is, I guess, fraught now.
Yes.
So we promised this a while ago when I built a new computer, and I feel like we're at the place now that we should do it.
I'm just going to say up front before we get into this, I think this podcast has been running long enough now that we are in we may have done this episode before and forgotten about it era.
Well,
just in case, because I have this sneaking suspicion that we've done something like this in the past. I think it's fine to go ahead and do this again because computers have changed. Software, we have changed. Everything is new, and there's fresh stuff to talk about here. But
yeah, the stuff I do is wildly different than it was when we started this podcast, because there's a whole world of things that I didn't know about when we first started doing this show.
Yeah, in fact, when we made show notes for this, we're talking about like kind of what we do on a new computer.
Yeah,
in case we didn't actually say that out loud, but yeah, the list of the notes that we made are like almost entirely different than what I would have made 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, and a lot of it is actually due to people who have engaged with us in the Discord and told us about things that I had no idea existed.
Yes.
So the first thing is you got to install Windows in the beginning. Well, actually, Actually,
Do you?
before you even do that, you got to go into your BIOS or UEFI now and disable the motherboard feature that automatically installs software when Windows boots the first time.
Yeah, it's such bullshit. Also, we will exclusively be using the term BIOS here to refer to UEFI. I hope that everyone is okay with that.
Old man yells at cloud.
BIOS is just it. Not only does it sound cool, it's easy to say. It's 2 syllables. It rolls off the tongue. UEFI is way too mouthy. I don't know.
What about
UFI? UFI?
UFI.
UFI? WEFI?
UFI.
Can we call it WEFI? UFI?
I'm not calling it WEFI.
UFI is a Final Fantasy VII character. I don't.
That's great. Wait, really? Is it the second half of Final Fantasy VII? I don't remember UFI in the first half.
Yes, she is mid to late game, I guess I would say.
Okay.
BIOS.
Yeah. Okay. So you go in the BIOS, you turn off. My Asus has motherboard has 2 things you have to turn off.
Wow, really? Is that Armory Crate? Is that
Armory Crate and then some other thing? The other one was off by default, but Armory Crate is on by default.
My Gigabyte has Gigabyte Control Center. Apparently, all of the makers have something like this now. MSI, ASRock, everybody.
Why would you not use this feature if you're a motherboard maker and wanted to install your crappy software on everybody's computers?
Yes, it's awful. Apparently, everyone's is terrible, as you can imagine.
Yeah. So turn that off, then make your Windows install media. You can use the Windows Media Maker. There's also if you find yourself installing Windows a lot, like if you build computers for friends or whatever, and you find yourself installing computers a lot, you might want to make an unintended install disk. There's good guides for that all over the place. It's a little more complicated than we're going to get into here, but basically it lets you say, okay, don't turn on the privacy stuff. Don't set this up with a Windows account, download any new drivers and updates and stuff. And lets you pre-configure your options. And actually Rufus, which is a USB thumb drive, bootable USB thumb drive booting utility, has flags, like does that stuff without you having to do any of the kind of hard work now. So you just basically grab the image and point it at the right image. And it's like, oh, hey, this is Windows 10 or Windows 11. And then it gives you some flags that you can check to turn off, attaching it to a Windows Microsoft account and stuff like that.
Two things here. Number one, is it easy to get an actual image of Windows from Microsoft at this point? Like the media creation tool is the kind of promoted way to do it these days, where you download this executable and run it, and it asks you to insert media, and then it makes an image for you. Yeah.
So once you do that, then it downloads the image to your hard drive, and you have to go find it in your temp files someplace. I believe the recommended method these days.
Lovely. Yeah. The other thing is Rufus is indispensable if people don't use it already. I mean, you may not have a need for it if you're not reinstalling Windows a lot or booting alternative operating systems and stuff. But if you are,
Raspberry Pi stuff, Rufus is super useful for. Although I guess now you use the Raspberry Pi media creation tool, which is really fully featured and good.
Yeah, there's also that. Rufus has support for, you can do things like you can take like an Ubuntu Live USB image and write it to a USB drive with a writable partition area on it. So you can essentially boot a live USB into Linux that is a permanent install. You can install packages on it. It has a desktop. You can put files on it. So it's essentially like having a real functional Linux install on a USB stick. Like it's not read only is what I'm saying. Like you can use it like a full system, which is good for like diagnostic stuff if you need to test things in another OS or whatever. Anyway, Rufus, it's good.
Rufus is pretty good. I recommend installing Windows without connecting a Microsoft account, which is pretty easy on Windows 10 is my understanding.
Yes. If you're doing, even if you're doing home, it's pretty trivial. Windows 10 Pro straight up just gives you an option where you just say, this is a personal install. And then there's straight up an offline account option you can click and just bypass all the Microsoft account stuff.
So the big reason you do this is because if you don't, then the installer will bind your desktop documents and pictures folders to OneDrive folders instead of to like your C users username folder, which sucks. It's bad.
It'll all be stuck in the OneDrive folder.
Yeah, and then when you want to fix that, then you have a weird copy file duplication problem, basically, that you have to figure out which is the older, which is the newer, and it's a pain in the ass.
The other reason for me, I mean, some people may not care about this as much, but it does not let you choose the name of your user directory. If you log in with Microsoft account during install, it will name your user directory the first like 6 characters of the email attached to your Microsoft account.
Well, that's interesting because my email that I use for that stuff is just will at something.
Yeah, so you're fine.
It's just
there.
will. Yeah.
But I like to use obscure email addresses for things like these sorts of accounts that don't have my name on them these days.
Yeah.
Which means I end up with a user directory with just a ridiculous garbled. And changing the name of your user directory in Windows after the fact is not recommended. It is messy.
Like it's better just make a new user at that point.
Yes, you have to do it in which I guess actually that would be an option if you had already done this, right? If you're not too attached to your current user account, you could just make a new one on an existing install.
That's true. That would work as well.
If you wanted to switch over. But I do an offline account and then I just put my name as Brad and that ends up with a home directory that is named that. And then you can log into a Microsoft account after the fact in 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's the important thing to note is you're not sacrificing your Microsoft account login by doing this. All you're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to add it in the user's control panel afterwards.
Sounds like in 11, it's a little bit dodgier to do.
Yes. So Windows 10, you just pull your internet connection. If you're on home, on Pro, you do use the offline. On Windows 11, when you get to the prompt to select a country, you hit Shift and F10 and you type OOBE /.
Oh, the out of box experience.
Yeah. The out of box experience, OOBE / bypass NRO. And I don't know what NRO is. It must be something online. But that'll reboot the computer. And when it comes back, you do Shift F10 again and type ipconfigs /release, or you can unplug the cable at that point. And that will, when you get to the, hey, what's your internet connection screen? You just say, I don't have internet. And then it does a local account.
You have to fool your Windows install.
It's really stupid that they don't just make this an option.
It's ridiculous, but I assume, that's probably serving some strategic goal of theirs, right? Of railroading people into OneDrive and other Microsoft online services, because that's how Windows makes money now, right? It is definitely, the goal is to railroad people into OneDrive, because the reason I don't like having my home folders on OneDrive is it means that when you have too much shit on your desktop or your photos directory or your documents directory, which balloons up really huge if you use stuff like Adobe, then you're going to start getting, hey man, you need more space on your OneDrive. For $5 a month, you can get a terabyte of space for your OneDrive, which everybody's going to want. It'll save your stuff everywhere. The other reason to have your Windows account attached to a Microsoft account, probably less for the people listening to this podcast, but definitely for people who are maintaining computers for friends and family, having it hooked up to your Microsoft account lets you recover the password for a Windows account you can't get into, which is, I think, highly valuable from a support and user's perspective. So it is like, I get the privacy reasons to not do this. I think it's worth being able to download stuff from the Microsoft Store, and I think it's worth being able to recover passwords remotely with a found password, with a forgot password prompt that'll send an email thing that'll let you get back into a locked out machine. Yeah, that's a good fallback. Actually, can I interject with a topic we did not put in the notes here? Yeah, of course. Are you doing, and we may have talked about this at some point, backup of your Windows profile, your user account? Because it occurs to me that because I'm not, that I have this NAS sitting here with infinite storage, tens of terabytes of free space on it, and I should probably be backing up my Windows user account in case anything like truly catastrophic happens. But are you doing that, and by what means? If so, I do back up the C. C doesn't get super backed up. I think I just back up the users folder. Okay, is that enough? Well, I mean, obviously that'll preserve anything that's in there, but I'm wondering if there's like some Microsoft sanctioned way to like back up a package of your user account where you could restore an install. No, the way you're supposed to back up your stuff now is use OneDrive. I think I don't even think the backup. I think in Windows 11, I don't think the backup tool even exists anymore. Okay, I guess it's just a restore tool now. Sure, I guess what I'm asking about is basically a Windows equivalent of Time Machine from macOS, which does do what I'm talking about. Yeah, no, you can do shadow copies of your files, but that's not going to do exactly what you want. They call it file history now, I think. Yeah. Anyway. So you've installed System Windows. Restore. There is also System Restore, which is the thing that lets you roll. But when Windows jacks something up, you can roll it back. I haven't had to use System Restore in probably 8 or 10 years at this point. So sure, I'll do some investigation. I bet there are probably some other good ways to back up a user account. Yeah, I think their official. Their official response these days is, hey, use OneDrive and pay us money. Great. Anyway,
So you have Windows installed at this point. It said, hey, don't worry, nothing's happening to your data. We got it under control. Now you need to install it drivers.
Mm-hmm.
The classic chipset driver.
Yeah. So I've been in this morass for a while and kind of past it now, but this is specific to motherboard makers. Some are better than others. The Gigabyte driver installer is a goddamn nightmare. So it's actually kind of a philosophical thing. I wanted to ask you, do you always go get drivers from your board maker, or do you get them from whoever made the specific piece of hardware? Like
it depends.
Like this board has Intel Wi-Fi and Bluetooth controller. It's got the classic, who makes Realtek makes all the audio codecs these days, right? That everybody uses. It's Realtek audio, Intel, Bluetooth. Trying to think what else, you know what I mean? So basically the Gigabyte driver installer has failed enough times for me that I basically said, fuck this, and just went and got drivers from all the actual hardware makers. But you never know if like the motherboard maker is doing
what they've jacked up, right?
Well, or if there's like custom stuff that they've done with the drivers because they're doing something unconventional on the board. Yeah, it's not great.
So chipset drivers I usually get directly from the chipset vendor.
Yeah, that's what I did with the AMD drivers on this thing, although they've been really slow to update their drivers compared to the board makers, which is also frustrating. The AMD platform has been a mess anyway.
Well, it's brand new is the part of the issue. And anyway. So sound, I don't use Realtek. I just disable that in the BIOS usually. Oh. So I have an external audio interface. And I just use that and I minimize the number of sound devices on the computer. I would say stuff that's not frequently updated and it's working okay, I will just grab from Windows Update. So that includes network drivers, sound drivers, anything like webcams, all that stuff. If I don't need to install some custom application for it, I won't.
Yeah. So that happened to me with the LAN port on this board. Windows.
There's LAN issues with that chipset, right?
Well, those are issues. I haven't run into the widespread issues with that. Like the performance of it has been fine, but Windows didn't know what it was, didn't have a driver for it by default.
And then it couldn't connect to Windows Update to get one because it's a network driver. Yeah.
And the Gigabyte installer for that, the driver for the LAN from them, which is the newest version of the driver, just failed. Like I could not make it apply the drivers to that device no matter what I did. So the Wi-Fi was recognized on this board. So I basically had to connect to Wi-Fi on this board and run Windows Update. And so
then it worked itself out.
Yeah. So I'm using an older LAN driver, but it seems to be working fine. So
the good news is the next time you install Windows on that computer, that probably won't be an issue because that driver will get built into the next version of the updater. Yeah. It's just that the 22H2 or whatever the current version that you download from Microsoft doesn't have the drivers for the new chipsets yet.
Yeah, that's weird because this LAN controller is from 2019.
Yeah, but it's my guess is that
is it a space thing? They just don't want to build 8,000 drivers for everything under the sun into the Windows installer?
No, it's probably that there's a different HID for it in the or different hardware identifier for that implementation of it.
Interesting.
On that chipset, on that motherboard chipset that your manufacturer used. Anyway,
there's been a lot of weird device driver type stuff with this board.
Well, what I was going to say is the driver for that chipset's probably on there. Probably just the Windows installer looks at that chipset on the motherboard, doesn't recognize the HID, and it's like, I don't know what to do with this one. So you could probably go find it in the let me browse let me see what drivers are installed on my system thing.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, like non-GPU chipset, if you're on Intel, you got to do the management engine interface driver, which is a new thing. It's basically like a little tiny low power computer that manages the big computer that does all the real work. And that's one you want to keep updated because when they like, especially if you're on a machine with like big little cores or something like that, that will dramatically impact your performance in certain workloads.
Yeah, that's been a fun one in my NAS, which has an ASUS C690 board in it. Which I run Linux on that machine, but as far as I can tell, you can only update the management engine in Windows, unless I missed something. Which is how I found out that you cannot boot Windows from USB. You can't Like you can with Linux, you can't install.
Oh yeah, you can't. You have to put another drive
so
in.
I literally had to pull the machine out and connect another SATA drive in there and install Windows on that just to update the management engine.
I bet that there'll be a Linux MEI driver at some point in the future.
Yeah, it might be possible, but I couldn't find it.
It may be maybe that you need a specific version of the kernel or something for that. Anyway,
and also like at least in ASUS's case, they like new BIOS versions will say, hey, don't flash this BIOS until you run this other management engine update first. So it is like kind of mandatory.
Yeah, I have that with my board as well. I would say make sure when you're doing the driver updates, reboot between each one. Just especially for chipset and MEI and stuff like that. That seems important these days.
Here's just another quick aside. We don't have to spend forever on my weird esoteric issues, but the integrated GPU on these new Ryzens is technically a Radeon.
Okay,
it's like some cut down. What is the current RDNA 3? I believe is their current GPU
that's right.
architecture. It's like cut down one of those, so it actually uses the Radeon drivers.
Oh wow.
And Steam does not know what the hell to do with both an NVIDIA, a GeForce, and a Radeon running at the same time. The weird thing that happens is Steam tries to auto detect which GPU to use. And the net effect there is every time you even open the Steam window, let alone launch a game, it takes like 10 plus seconds of sitting there doing nothing while it tries to figure that out.
Oh, can you turn off that integrated GPU in the BIOS?
That's what, and you can also disable the device in Windows, which is what I ended up doing.
Yeah, I would turn off the BIOS too.
And then it works fine, but then there's no fallback if my graphics card blows up and I lose display. I'm not going to be able to get any display out of Windows.
Well, yeah, because when your BIOS detects that there's no display, it'll turn on the integrated again. When your GPU state changes, it'll turn on the integrated graphics again.
If I leave it to auto in the BIOS and disable it in Windows, and Windows doesn't detect another GPU, do you think it would turn it back on? Maybe
that's what I would do.
Or like in safe mode, it might work. Okay, anyway,
safe mode, it'll definitely work. Something will work.
Yes.
Anyway,
computers
or you reset the BIOS and then change your setting and then restore your settings and then. So another thing, we didn't have this in the notes. At this point, theoretically, your BIOS should be working right. Like this is your hey, everything's stable. I'm gonna save my BIOS settings now so that when you fuck with something later and break your machine, you can restore to these BIOS defaults and you'll be back in business. Yeah,
I don't know if my new board has this. I assume probably everybody has this at this point, that you can save the configuration to a file.
Yeah, that's a newish feature, or maybe it's a high-end feature. Mine does that too.
Yeah, and then the fan curve interface in the BIOS, you can also save the fan configuration to a file. So I started doing that rather than trusting whatever NVRAM is on the board to store profiles for things, because I've had that crap out already at least once. So I've just actually started saving all the BIOS stuff to files that I keep.
Well, that stuff will also get overwritten when you update the BIOS as well.
There's also that. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're into the fun stuff. Utilities. You have converted me to your portable app ways for the most part.
Great. It's not perfect, but I think on net it is a benefit for sure.
I mean, my kind of strategy is for small stuff like I don't know, like USB D view or
I could go down the line here. I've got tons of stuff that anything that's like small and has a portable version, I always go for that.
Fan control lives there.
Yeah, fan control or fan view. Gosh, I mean, Putty. I don't really use Putty anymore. Notepad++, like you said. Well, most open source stuff, like I've got Blender and Inkscape in here in portable versions.
So I'll say I find that some of those more function, like I have a hard time using Blender in the portable version because I want it to be integrated with the OS in some important ways. Inkscape is a similar situation. I think Inkscape works a little bit better in the non-portable version.
So one of the ways in which using portable apps is imperfect is that things that need to register with Windows at a low level don't just happen. In a lot of cases, they'll have like some batch file in there that you need to run as an administrator to set up whatever hooks that the installer would have done, which is a little bit of a pain. Like OBS has something like that for the virtual camera. You have to run a script to make the virtual camera work. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah, it takes, it might take a little bit of reading the README to figure out how to do it, and it's kind of a pain, but you do it once and it's fine. The upside is this is the first major machine transition from computer to computer I've done since I started using mostly portable stuff. Moving Audacity and OBS over and firing them up and having them look and be configured and everything exactly like they were on the other machine made all the other hassle worth it. Like,
yeah, having OBS do that without having any hassle sounds very nice. OBS is always a pain in the ass to move.
Yeah, it was kind of nuts. Like the last thing I streamed on my old machine was Sons of the Forest, and that also turned out to be the first thing I streamed on the new machine.
Yeah,
and I opened OBS with Sons of the Forest running, and it was just capturing video and audio without me touching anything. Literally, the first time I launched it on the new machine, it was kind of crazy. You will run into some issues with stuff like Audacity and OBS. It's not an issue, but it's another thing to know. You often have to do some weird little janky thing to make them run in portable mode. Like for Audacity, you have to create a folder in the Audacity folder called portable settings. That will make it boot into portable mode. OBS is similar. I think it's a text file there. Yes. You have to make a portable_mode.txt empty file in the directory. So weird. It's a little bit weird, but again,
does that mean I can convert my existing non-portable mode version of OBS into a portable mode version of OBS?
Should be able to. If you just drop that text file in there and did nothing else, then when you ran OBS, I think it would just run as a clean install. It wouldn't find your old settings. Okay. But I think if you moved everything over manually from your profile folder in app data or wherever it lives, that would probably work.
It's interesting.
It's also a nice way to manage multiple. I mean, this is more relevant to something like OBS than some other things, but I have multiple versions of OBS. Like I have an old OBS 27 install here just as a fallback because I had done like a bajillion different scenes and stuff during the pandemic early on for Giant Bomb.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to OBS 28, I was like, I'll keep this just in case I ever need to go back to some of these old scenes, but I want to wipe the slate clean so I can run this old OBS and get all those old scenes if I ever need to check something or check some old configuration.
I was going to say with OBS, especially, it's worth mentioning if you have a bunch of overlays with like graphics and stuff, OBS won't, you have to be thoughtful about where you save that stuff inside that portable app structure. Because if you save them on your desktop or someplace dopey, it's not there. That part won't be portable and all of your stuff will break.
Yeah, those paths will be broken if you don't move everything. You're talking about assets like images and stuff.
Yeah, like images, audio, video, whatever you use.
It's gotten a little better in that it will prompt you when you launch it with all the files that are missing and let you specify a new path.
But it doesn't tell you what the path on the old computer was when you're doing that. So it's then you're playing the find my file game, which sucks. Anyway, so portable apps are really good.
Yes. Another real quick one, just another thing you might run into. Like I moved my Irfan view over from the old machine, and Windows. First of all, Windows has gone to this kind of annoying new thing for file associations via the default apps control panel.
Yeah,
you can still manually go in there and pick individual file types, but they basically say like, what's your image viewer? What's your music player? What's your this and that, and Irfan view is not showing up as a valid image viewer in this new install. So there are some things like that portable apps won't always work great with.
There's also stuff like if you have things that integrate with applications like Stream Deck plugins are a good example for OBS.
Yes.
That stuff never works with portable installs or you have to do a lot of hoop jumping to make it work.
Yeah. I had to go dig the Stream Deck plugin out of program files from the Stream Deck install directory and move that into the portable OBS directory.
That's actually not that bad.
That was not so bad, but I did have to hunt down a forum thread where one of the moderators said like, hey, here's where to put the files.
Got it.
I was just this morning trying to set up, this is something we'll get to in a little bit. The hardware info, HW info.
Yeah.
Has a pretty good plugin for Stream Deck. So you can make different buttons on the Stream Deck, monitor different, CPU temperature, voltage, voltages, whatever.
Yeah.
That also does not work with the portable version. So yeah,
that sucks.
There is a fair amount of stuff like that is a bit of a pain.
The next thing is automating like the basic install stuff that you use has gotten really easy in the last few years. The rise of Chocolatey and WinGet and Scoop gives you like, I want to say like Linux style package manager to like command line based package manager that lets you make a big text file that says, hey, here's all the stuff I want to install. And then it'll just run through that stuff and install it. And we're not talking about like open source. I mean, there's open source stuff in there, obviously, but also like stuff like Discord and Chrome and Firefox and all of that. So when I did this new machine, the first thing I did was grab Chocolatey from chocolatey.org. That's chocolate with a Y at the end, .org. And I just made a big long batch file that did Chocolatey and Choco install a bunch of different things and like walked away for 10 minutes and came back, and I had the applications that I normally use on the computer, which was really nice. Dropbox and
wow. So you're using it for a lot of GUI stuff, it sounds like.
Yeah, I literally used it to install everything that I like. The thing about it is it'll have installers for most stuff that the downloader is freely available. So like if you need a subscription to get access to the downloader, it's probably not going to be in there. But like Discord and Firefox, Chrome, stuff like Notion, I think was in there. Audacity. I use a local install of Audacity. I don't do a portable for that. Anything I wasn't doing portable installs of, I installed almost all of it through Chocolatey. WinGet also is good. It's basically built into Windows 11 at this point. I think you might still have to download it from Windows 10, but maybe it's part of the default install at this point.
So I have it as part of this new Windows 10 install. It may have come along with something else I installed, but I didn't go out of my way to install WinGet individually.
If you get it, if you downloaded Windows Terminal from the Microsoft Store or Package Tools, or I think WSL comes with it as well.
That
if
might
you have
be
the Windows systems for Linux.
Yeah, so. I will say WSL and PowerShell, stuff like that, Microsoft's kind of big flagship open source stuff, they seem to really want you to use the Microsoft Store for those things.
Yeah, because it's automatically updated, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously they have business reasons to want you to use the Microsoft Store as well.
Yeah.
But more to the point, there are straight up features on some of these things that are not available in the offline installer version anymore. Like to get systemd support in WSL2, you have to use the Microsoft Store version, I believe.
I didn't know that. That's weird.
I think that is the case. PowerShell, I used to use their kind of basic installer from their GitHub repo for PowerShell, and it's supposed to auto update itself, but it never would. Like it would lag old versions because it just wouldn't. For some reason, the auto update never worked. So like, as much as the Microsoft Store is kind of a pain, I've found that it's probably better to acquiesce to their desires in that case and just do it.
Well, so WinGet pulls directly from the Microsoft Store.
Okay.
Like the Microsoft, well, that's not true. There's two sources. There's like a package source and then there's the Microsoft Store. And WinGet, it will often give you the choice between getting the Microsoft Store version and the package manager version.
Interesting.
The nice thing is once you install it with that, if you get it from the Microsoft Store version, it seems to update it automatically. At least that's been my experience so far.
Yeah. So I've got Windows Terminal, PowerShell, WSL2, maybe some other stuff, and it seems it's all updating fine.
Yeah. The Chocolatey stuff, generally, once you grab it from there initially, you're going to be like the app itself is going to be responsible for updating itself.
Oh, that was going to be my question about the GUI stuff. And that's one of the reasons I don't really install GUI stuff in Windows from a package manager, because so many of them have their own kind of auto update routines. So I was going to ask, like, are you Choco updating Discord, or are you letting Discord just does its own thing?
Discord just does its own thing once it's installed. Dropbox does its own thing. 1Password does its own thing. This is one of those things where I like, conceptually it feels hacky, but in the reality of Windows software, it's the right solution, I think, for the problem.
Yeah. And also, like, Windows software, let's face it, is pretty hacky in general. Like, yeah, there is no truly elegant solution. But the idea of installing a new machine and literally feeding a text file into one command line and having it install literally everything you use is kind of beautiful. It
wasn't quite everything, but it was almost everything. Yeah, like I was really blown away.
When it installs GUI stuff that typically has a sort of click through wizard installer, does it automate all of that?
Just goes through all that.
No kidding. You don't. So it's completely unattended for everything.
I'm trying to think. Dropbox is probably the only thing I installed with that had a click-through installer that
Okay.
actually had, like, most of those. If you think about it, most of the click-through installers you click through at this point are agreeing to license terms and then stuff that you're not going to touch, like because you're going to install everything to C program files, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I had anything that popped up that I had to agree to. I may have had to agree to some licenses when I launched the applications the first time.
Okay. Last thing real quick here. I moved to Scoop on this new install, which I just became aware of recently.
What is Scoop, Brad?
It's just another command line package manager for Windows, but it is much more focused on just command line open source utilities. They do have some GUI stuff on there, but it's not really the main focus. And like at the end of the day, that's what I want most out of a package manager. Is like I want a Windows build of Vim,
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Normal things people want.
Yeah, of course. iPerf 3, everybody needs that on their Windows install.
I was just thinking, where's my iPerf 3 install? I don't know.
But I mean, if that's the stuff you're after, Scoop. The nice thing about Scoop is it installs entirely into a directory in your home directory.
Oh, that is nice.
And if you want to get rid of it and everything it's ever installed, you just delete that directory and it's all gone. Like there are no.
That's very Unixy,
and that's kind of why I like Chocolatey. I don't know what WinGet is doing, but Chocolatey kind of puts files all over the place in program files and stuff, and that can get weird with things you install that have like log files or configuration files that they expect to find in certain places. Like you'll have to dig deep into where Chocolatey puts executables in some cases to look for logs and things. So that's the nice thing about Scoop. It's very clean and minimal.
WinGet puts them wherever the Windows installer is going to put them. So for like Microsoft Store apps, they go in that weird untouchable folder. For normal GDK apps, they land on your program files folder. The one thing to note about WinGet and Chocolatey, oddly, WinGet, the non-community built version of this thing, has been worse for this in the past, although it hasn't been as bad lately. There is often stuff in WinGet that is probably bad. And you want to be careful installing, like you want to pay really close attention to what the source is for your WinGet grabs. Chocolatey too, but WinGet is the bigger one. Like if something is not actually available it is possible that there is some sort of ill-intentioned software that has the same name that is designed to lure people into installing stuff that you don't want installed on your computer.
That's the main reason I still don't use WinGet. I mean, let's hope Windows Defender still does its job well. I think it does.
I mean, I've never had it pop up with anything. I have not had it stop me from installing anything. I also don't think I've actually installed anything that was bad, but I have definitely seen things that were like, I was like, oh man, that is really suspect. I'm not going to install that one. What about cloud storage, Brad? Where are you at with cloud storage these days?
Cloud storage. Glad you
the
asked.
Dropboxes, your G drives, your everybody loves OneDrive, right? What about your iCloud file storage?
Oh, I don't know about that one. Do you use that?
I mean, I have it because I pay for Apple bullshit and all my phones are backed up to it, but I don't really use it for any files.
I should probably give Apple the 99 cents a month. I don't use any of their cloud stuff, so I don't really have a need for it.
Where do you back up your phone? Brad, no. You got to back up your phone, man.
Hey, remember when I said I don't back up my Windows user account?
Okay.
The phone is a lot like that.
Next week's episode, we're going to back up all of Brad's computers.
Yeah, I'll address that.
Brad, I'm very disappointed in you.
There's a lot. Look, I'm so behind on certain backup things.
Yeah,
since I moved to Linux on the NAS that I haven't gotten around to setting up yet because I never have time.
Okay, fair.
It's all in hand eventually. Anyway, what do you use? I've got 3 different Google Drives.
Yeah, I have 2 Google Drives for different jobs.
Yeah, different work purposes. I do use OneDrive for some stuff and Dropbox. So I've got like 5 different cloud buckets I use.
So I cheat and I just share my Google Drive for our podcast stuff, which is one of the 2 that I use, with my personal one, which also has a lot of space because I pay for Google Photos. And I mostly paid for Google Photos originally so that I would get enough space in my Gmail that I could continue using Gmail. But now it turns out I actually quite like Google Photos. So they get $5 of whatever from me, $50 a year or something.
Yeah.
The one that my primary is Dropbox. I use Dropbox as my bucket for holding stuff. But then I also have a OneDrive for work, because why wouldn't I have a OneDrive for work? Because we're a Microsoft house over at the game studio.
Why would you do that? Why would anybody do that?
I'm going to go and tell you, I did a Blue Sky about this the other day. The reason people do it is because you could pay $50 a month per person for Dropbox and Slack and your Google Drive and all the best versions of everything, or you can pay $20 a month to Microsoft for slightly shittier versions of all of that software.
Okay, you have fully made me understand why people use, what's the term? Office 365? Is that the blanket term for the Microsoft
Live
suite?
365, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, now I fully get it. Okay. Like, because all I ever hear is people complaining about Teams, and like when I had to use Outlook for the last 4 months of Giant Bomb, I hated that.
Yeah, if you want to have a bad email experience and a bad group chat experience and a bad file sharing experience, and I'll be honest, Word, pretty good. Excel, pretty good. Like Excel, best in class, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But everything surrounding it is like the shitification version of the people who are doing that stuff better.
I kind of, I mean, if it worked better, I would get the appeal though of one account that just gives you all of that stuff.
Well, and it's nice. I mean, like, okay, I give Teams a lot of grief. Teams does some stuff really, really well. Like there are a handful of things, like their interfaces for managing large meetings, like video meetings, is better than anybody else, I think, or anything I've used. But the rest of it is a trash fire. Anyway. And it's real heavy too.
Right. So cloud storage. Are you still just installing you kind of mentioned this with Chocolatey, just installing the kind of standard Windows installer version of each of those services?
It's funny because I'm kind of thinking I might be making a mistake though, because, right now for all of the cloud storage I'm using, now that I have gigabit and my computer's fast and all that stuff, and I'm almost always online, I generally keep like 2 folders always saved locally, and then everything else is just the weird cloud version where it's kind of not synced over, and you choose to grab it when you access the file, and there's like a half-second lag.
Kind of on demand. Yeah.
Yeah. That works pretty well for me. The rclone thing that we talked about a few months ago, I didn't realize that worked in Windows as well.
So I haven't tried that aspect of it, but I've been using rclone a lot in Linux, and it fucking rules.
What are you using it for specifically?
So I mount all of those. I mount all 5 of those cloud storage buckets as just straight up mount points on my NAS. And it's amazing.
So do you then share them back out so you can access those from your PC?
Not in that case, because I tend to do most of my work that would require command line stuff on the NAS in a container that runs on there. So then I can access it from the MacBook just as well as I can from Windows. So I just don't really have the use case to do it in Windows, but you absolutely could. In fact, I think we've talked about this before. You can mount all of those cloud services as drive letters in Windows if you want.
Yeah, like or you can mount them in a folder system, in like a C : cloud storage : / Dropbox or whatever.
Yeah, so you don't even have to make them
something sane, not use drive letters.
You're totally right. You don't have to use drive letters. You can mount them as part of your C drive if you would like. Anyway,
yeah, I wonder. So I wonder if you lose the. So honestly, like a big percentage of my Dropbox use is putting a file in the Dropbox and then right clicking it, getting a link and sending that link to somebody. And I think having the local app running is probably like the number of times a day I do that is very, very high. And I think having to go to like the web interface and then find the file and all that stuff is probably not worth the savings to actually mount those. I might do that for the Google Drive though.
So our rclone can do that. It'll give you a share link for anything.
By right click, like does it have shell extension?
That I don't know.
Or do I have to run a command line tool because I'm less excited about that.
Okay, yeah. So rclone does have its own command line interface, and it's very. I don't know what I'm sure people in the like coding or Linux channels on the Discord could say if there is is there a name for this kind of command line syntax philosophy of like binary verb target kind of thing. Did that come about with Git, where everything now is like it's rclone link path to file? Like that's how you get the link.
That's the way. That's the way mount has worked for 100 years.
Kind of.
Right. Like if you think about the way the old mount command worked, that's how it's always
sort
worked.
of. Well, you're kind of mount -t file system type. It's command line flag stuff.
The flags. Yeah.
It's gotten to this very kind of natural language thing though that I find pretty appealing or easy to work with.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyway, sorry, I digress here. But the way rclone works, you can use its own command line interface to access stuff directly on the bucket, or if you mount it into your local file system, you can use whatever you use there, whether it's Bash and Linux or like File Explorer and Windows.
Yeah.
You could probably pretty easily set up some kind of like custom right click shortcut with that command line to get the link if you wanted. But then I know that's kind of probably more than a lot of people want to do. I bet you if you Google for it, I guarantee somebody's got a solution.
That's interesting. I'll have to look at that because that and I assume that this isn't actually copying all the files down because at this point my Dropbox is pretty stupid big.
No, it's 100% remote.
It's just remote. Yeah,
it doesn't pull anything down unless you physically copy something to a local location.
Then you can use things like sync tool and things like that to copy your important files over.
That's what's amazing about it is that anything you can use against a local file system also works against these cloud buckets that are being represented as local file systems. It's like when I'm in Linux, for example, I can use like GNU find on my entire Google Drive.
Man, that's nice.
Like I needed to make a bunch of directories in sequence yesterday on a Google Drive, and I just did it with the one-liner in Z Shell instead of like I don't know about you, but I hate clicking through the laggy web interfaces for most cloud storage solutions
the Google
all the time.
I mean, I literally pay for Dropbox because the Google Drive web interface is so bad.
Oh, it's so slow. It's so slow.
You can't find anything is the other problem.
Yeah. So yes, being able to do the things you can do with a local file system against your cloud storage is pretty nice. The rclone setup per bucket is a little fiddly. They have pretty good tutorials up for it, but it does require
you have to do OAuth configuration and all that stuff.
It is some OAuth type stuff. The nice thing though, I will say the last thing, the nice thing is all of the configuration is in one file.
Oh, so then you can move it to another computer and so that's nice.
You do all that work once and then you can just move that conf file to, I've got it in like 3 places now and it all just works.
Tempted to mount all these folders on my NAS someplace and then share those folders out.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm doing it right now.
Then it gives me a really easy way to access those. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. If you can get around, it's funny now that we're talking about this. If you can either get around or like find solutions for stuff like you mentioned, like getting share links and stuff, you could kind of use all these cloud services without installing any of their actual software in Windows.
Yeah, it's conceptually interesting. Anyway, I did like the section in the rclone docs that was like, hey, here's how we handle Windows paths, which they didn't say that Windows paths are stupid, but it was strongly implied. I'm going to say,
yes. I get it.
And then, so then stuff like password managers, fan control. We've talked about fan control before. Fan control is amazing. Everybody should use a password manager. Please use a password manager.
Yeah.
My 1Password just gave me the notifications because it's going to support passkeys soon, which I'm really excited about because it means that I won't have to use passwords anymore for a lot of sites, apparently.
What is what's the definition of a passkey?
It uses the token is your biometric data from your phone, the fingerprint or your face.
Oh wow!
And then there's no password at that point.
Okay. I tend to like Bitwarden quite a bit, but Bitwarden does not have that.
Everybody's going to have that soon. Would be my guess.
Okay.
Fan control lets you do conditional curves on your cooling. So like when things get above a certain temperature, you can change the fan curve that you get to bring it back down and stuff like that. It's really neat. If you have a Stream Deck, which is that Elgato thing with the buttons and the screens on it, there are so many things you can use that for. Like people use those for hotkeys in Photoshop and Blender and stuff like that. Now they're really neat. You can install that stuff. Input Director. This is one that I've just recently started. I changed over because I used a cross-platform version. Input Director is a software mouse and keyboard for secondary computers.
Okay.
It only works on Windows is the knock against Input Director. There's others that are cross-platform that are not quite as functional for what I do, but I use Input Director. It's the reason I like this one is because it knows when you're playing a game and it doesn't try to move your mouse off of the edge of the monitor when you're in a full screen or borderless full screen app. And you can also do things like, I think I have mine bound so that I have to press Control and Shift at the same time to move the mouse from screen to screen, which ends up being a solve for my problem of losing the mouse on the secondary monitor.
That sounds useful.
Yeah, it's good. And then like I used to have a tool for changing bindings on my keyboard, my QMK keyboard, but now there's a website that if you load up in Chrome called caniusevia.com, VIA, it's a QMK keyboard editor that runs in Chrome and it recognizes most of the common QMK keyboards. You can set up a template for it. You can change your lighting. You can change the layers of your keyboard, all of that inside this web interface. And you don't have to have anything local to do it. It just connects to the HID device from the browser, which is awesome.
That's cool.
PowerToys.
Yes. PowerToys.
Love me some PowerToys.
Yes. Also loved PowerToys back in the day. Like,
yeah.
Not only am I excited that new PowerToys is awesome, but I also just love it as a throwback because PowerToys in Windows 95 felt like you were like getting away with some secret knowledge.
Well, and it's almost all open source now. So the source for all these, a lot of these, I think, is on GitHub. I don't know about all of them are.
Yeah. So PowerToys is another one that I've installed through the Microsoft Store now.
But I love PowerToys Run, which is the one that lets you hit Alt and space to hot launch. It basically gives you the Mac Spotlight UI for launching applications, which is fabulous.
I should probably start using that instead of the start menu for this sort of thing at this point.
Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of start menu, disabling search in the start menu.
Can you?
Disabling internet search in the start menu.
Oh, dude, I would love to disable literally everything except the applications in the start menu.
That's like what this does.
Even local file search. Like I looked for solutions and it was a lot of like unreliable registry stuff.
Yeah. So if you go to Group Policy Editor, gpedit.msc.
The old GP edit. Yes. Yeah, so
the old GP edit.
That's only in Pro and up, I believe.
Yes. Alternately, the easiest way to do it is probably to go to HKey current user software policies, Microsoft Windows Explorer, create a key called disable search box suggestions and set that to 1, then restart the computer.
And does that literally disable all types of search, not just internet?
I believe that is web search results, which solves about 90% of my problem with the search thing. But the other way to do it is just use the Power Toy because it just searches the installed applications. It does exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Power Rename is really good. It lets you use regedit exp to
regular
expressions. Yes, thank you. To change file names in a directory.
Cool.
So you can add basically if you want to easily append or put a postfix on something, you can. Fancy zones, which is less important on Windows 11, it turns out, because it's kind of built in.
They've got some version of that in there, right?
There's like 6 basic templates that are like a quad, a 2/3, 1/3 split, a 50-50 split, a 50-25-25, a 25-25-50, and 33-33-33.
Oh, you can't
define defaults.
You can't define your own.
You can't define your own by default.
Okay.
If you have a vertical monitor, Fancy Zones is a must-have.
Sure, I could definitely see that. Fancy Zones just lets you snap windows to specified kind of window geometry.
Yes, subsets of your monitors, basically.
Yeah. Yes, I finally started using it, and it is indeed awesome.
Color Picker is another really good one.
Real quick before we move on, you know what I wish there was an option for in Windows when it comes to window management is to, I'm trying to think how to put it, like essentially turn on sort of hard borders on your desktop. Like I would love to be able to drag a window and have it not drag off the monitor optionally, where you could just drag it up into a corner or against a side, not have it snap, have it keep its size, but just put it up in the corner and still keep the entire window on the screen. I wish there was some option or toggle for let me drag this to the edge, but not drag it off. So
if you drag the monitor if you extend the window and make it tall, it'll do that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've done that, but that still is changing the size of the window. Then it spans the entire height of the monitor. If you just got like a little tiny window and you just want to drag it all the way up into the corner and have it sit there and not fly off the side. Would be nice. Like
hard edges.
Yes.
So there's a command. Yeah. On Unix, you can like hold Alt or something and it does that, I think. Right.
Yeah. If anybody knows how to do that in Windows, I would love to
know. Color picker, real good. Windows Shift C, and wherever your mouse cursor is, it gives you the color of the background there.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Look at that.
That one's a banger.
Kind of basically like Pipette in Photoshop kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's for anything on your Windows renderer. Like, for example, your wall is D79B5C right now in the lighting that you have. And then it gives you that number in hex and RGB and HSL as well, which is super nice.
That's cool.
Gives you the most recent ones you hit too.
Yeah.
And then image resizer. I made presets for all of the Steam and the normal promotional sizes that I have to generate for Steam, and it will resize stuff to fit with just a right click and going to a menu and picking the thing you want, which is fantastic.
That sounds like a huge time saver.
Yeah.
Paste. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Paste as plain text, I think, is a newer one. I think they just added that pretty recently.
Yeah, I just got that when I updated the other day. I was excited about it.
I think by default it's Control Window V. It does exactly what it says. It strips all formatting from whatever text you're pasting and just pastes it as plain text. And you've been able to do this with Control Shift V for a long time, but I don't know.
Some apps, yeah.
Is that? Yeah, I assume that was application specific and it doesn't work everywhere. But this is global, so yeah, that's super nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just speaking of paste, Win plus V. I've started using Win plus V instead of Control V.
Oh, it's great.
Is that a Windows 11 thing or is it on Windows 10 too?
No, it works in Windows 10 also.
So it gives you have to turn it on, but it gives you clipboard history. So you can go back through recent things you've had in the clipboard and grab things. You can turn that on by going into settings and search for clipboard history.
So I just did it this morning because I had forgotten to turn it on this install. Now, the first time you hit Window V, it'll actually just have a turn on button right there in the thing.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Clipboard history is extremely useful. does it clear it every time you reboot? I'm not sure.
Don't know.
Actually, I think it might start saving once you enable it, and maybe it does persist.
It may be persist. I haven't rebooted my computer in a minute, so it would be hard for me to know.
Last thing before we move on, in terms of just built-in Windows stuff, does everybody know about the built-in? Well, I don't even know what they call it. The screen capture stuff. The
WinShift S.
Yes, WinShift S.
WinShift S is the friggin' business, man.
It is like maybe the best thing to happen to Windows in years. Honestly,
hey, I'm grabbing I just grabbed your face here. I'm going to give it to you. You can use it for the show art. It's exactly what you're hoping for.
It's not. I did not dress for.
Oh, you weren't making a face that's appropriate for show art either. There you go. You look a little confused.
Maybe I'll throw it in there. Wow, I look very red for some reason.
My monitor is probably warm. But anyway, yeah.
But yes. So like I know some people still will install like third-party utilities to take screen grabs. And you don't have to do that anymore. So WinShift S, it'll pop a little menu up at the top when you do it, and you can drag select any region of the screen. You can have it take the entire desktop. You can have it take just the window that your mouse is highlighting.
You can do a freeform blob.
You can do a lasso.
Also, it freezes the screen.
Yeah.
So you can get things that normally are difficult to screenshot because as soon as you hit another button, they go away.
Right. So as soon as you hit the key combo, whatever's on the screen just freezes. So taking any kind of screenshots of a video or anything, or a game.
You want to show somebody a UI and you're like, hey, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And
the best part about it is that it copies the image data right into the clipboard. So you can do that and then immediately Control V it into Discord or Slack or whatever.
Not Teams though.
Really?
Takes a really long time in Teams.
What the fuck? Dude?
Yeah.
These are all Microsoft products. How is that the worst one?
Man, the thing that never works is copying an image from Discord into Teams. You always have to put it someplace else first.
Yeah. It also allows you to click it in the what is the notification center of the thing?
Yeah, the bottom right corner. Yeah.
It also puts it there so you can go back and click it and save it as a ping or whatever right from there.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you one of the first things I do with that notification center on Windows is set it to do not disturb and to never turn off do not disturb.
Really?
I don't like Windows notifications. I don't think they're particularly useful. Yeah. It's almost always stuff I don't care about.
A lot of them are pretty annoying. You're not wrong.
The one thing I have done recently, the latest version of Windows has that there's iOS support for phone link now. Mm-hmm. So you can get your phone notifications to pop up on the Windows machine. Huh. Which means when I get a text on my phone that I don't look at during the day and I'm sitting on my Windows computer, I get the text notification.
And I've seen people talking about that new support for that. Maybe I should set that up.
I think it's only on Windows 11, Brad. I'm sorry.
Oh, that stinks. Well, the main reason I didn't really care about it is it still doesn't give you full iMessage functionality.
So you can respond to text messages that are in iMessage in your text app, but you cannot respond to iMessages. Right. You do get the notifications for the iMessages, which is like 90% of what I want.
It's a start, and I hope they will get there. If I would actually maybe just go ahead and upgrade to Windows 11 to be able to iMessage directly from my PC.
Yeah, like it is a real hole. It turns out.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else you got?
Gosh, I guess I could mention WSL2 real fast.
WSL2, the Windows Systems for Linux,
Windows Subsystem for Linux, the sequel.
Well, we're into some real dark business here.
Yeah, I won't get too deep into it, but I am using it more seriously now than I have in the past, now that I've got all this fast hardware.
Yes.
It works quite well installing it from the store. It has systemd support now, which is the init system that 95% of Linux distros use these days, and a lot of Linux software just kind of expects systemd to be in place.
What systemd is how you launch services and stuff, right?
Yeah, the init system is essentially the first process that runs on. There might be nuance here I'm missing, but generally when you start an operating system, the first thing the kernel runs is the init system, and that handles launching everything else. Launchd is the name of the init system in macOS. Windows, who the hell knows? Systemd is a whole topic, man.
It's powerful.
Well, yes, it does a lot of things, and that's why a lot of the old graybeards hate it. I mean, hate it. Like, dude, we should maybe do an episode about this. Old school Unix hacker types, a lot of them really hate systemd because they think it is dramatically out of scope for what the Unix philosophy should be. Because they think it's one thing that does way too many things. There's a little bit of a weird conspiratorial thinking aspect to it of putting too much power into too few hands kind of thing.
There's an interesting idea here in my head that now I hadn't thought about this before, but like the Unix philosophy of every tool has a program and it's limited to doing that one thing really well.
Yes.
And then there's the Alton Brown theory that there should be no unitaskers.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we could glue these two ideas together and they'll never touch the ground. They'll just keep spinning forever, right? It's like the cat and the toast with the jam on the top. Anyway,
like the systemd mistrust is basically the kind of central banking conspiracy theory of the Linux world.
So you're saying they're cranks?
Yes, kind of.
Scene drama coming up.
To go off on a tangent here, but it's cool that you can turn that on now, so that your Linux instance in Windows runs systemd for things that depend on that. I grabbed the current Debian from the store, which is stable, which is Bullseye, which, as we talked about on the FOSSPod, Debian stable tends to be pretty outdated.
It's old.
But you can just edit the sources for apt, the package manager, to make it testing, which is like kind of bleeding edge, and that has worked quite well. So I just have a
SID.
No, SID is unstable. SID is like the straight up development branch. Like you probably don't want to rely on that for serious work. But testing, I've messed with Arch in a container enough to say that testing is also almost as up to date as Arch, and I've had way fewer problems with bugs and stuff. So I think it's a good option for if you want to like do work with current packages, but it's still reasonably stable. Anyway, I don't mean to ramble about this too much.
So this is a stupid question, but can you like launch a Linux GUI from the WSL2?
Yes, GUI Linux apps work. So that was something that originally only worked in Windows 11.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they relented and have backported that to 10 now. So any WSL2 can run maybe not any, but most GUI applications for Linux you can run right in Windows now. Like WSL2 is kind of amazing.
That's really cool.
Like, honestly, I bet for a lot of people, it obviates the need to even have a Linux install running on actual hardware anywhere. Like, it probably does what most or a lot of people might need. The stuff I am going to use it for now that I have way better hardware, I'm going to set Whisper back up on it, the machine learning speech to text, like audio transcription. Like, that's actually super useful for me in some of the work I do, to be able to just feed like podcast recordings into it and get text out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I might goof around with Stable Diffusion just because I've got a 4090. I don't really have any need for it. But and the other thing is these new NVIDIA cards having AV1 encode on them.
Can you access that from the WSL environment though?
Yes. So
I didn't know that.
Since, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, the game ready NVIDIA drivers for Windows also support the card in WSL2. So you don't even have to do anything special. Like the Linux instance knows the hardware is there and can access it. You still have to worry about installing dependencies and stuff that make the actual software work.
Yeah.
So for example, even the FFmpeg that's in Debian testing obviously is not built with AV1 NVEnc support and stuff like that, but NVIDIA's got actually pretty good instructions up for just building a custom version of FFmpeg with all the newest NVEnc stuff in there. So I'm going to do that at some point and mess around with like the hardware AV1 encode.
That's really cool.
Last thing I'll say, I compiled Python from source in that instance at one point, and it is the thing that has hit all 16 cores on the CPU the hardest by far that I've done so far. And it completed very quickly, and that was awesome for as many issues as I have had with this platform in general so far. Seeing the big beefy 16 core CPU do something really heavy really quickly was pretty awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I haven't set that up on the new computer. I actually should. I wonder, can you pick whatever distro you want, or they have supported distros?
It's pretty limited. So they've got Ubuntu and Debian are on the store. I think Ubuntu stays pretty up to date. I don't know if it's 2304 just yet, but it's pretty recent.
Well, once you have it installed, you can update it internally, right?
Yeah, you can update it kind of like I did with moving to Debian testing. You can just kind of update your package sources and do it that way. They've got Kali Linux. There are not a lot, actually. There's no Fedora, I don't think. Sorry, I'm trying to open the store and see what else is there. It's very few. It's like 4 or 5 distros, I think.
That makes sense.
Ubuntu, Kali, Debian, that might be it, actually, which seems kind of crazy. You can, SUSE. They have SUSE as well. I think that might be it. Pistachio Linux. Looks like it might be Arch based. Okay, there's some weird stuff on here. Oracle Linux. All right, I take it back. There are a few. You can actually turn any Linux image into a WSL2 container, though.
Oh, okay.
They have Microsoft has instructions up for doing it. Oh, they have Alpine on here. They're actually more than I gave them credit for. And Fedora. Okay. I take back what I said. The problem is when you search Linux, you get every single fucking thing that has Linux in it. And so a lot of these distros are like dozens of results down the page when I thought they would kind of float to the top. So there are actually quite a few options in here. But again, you can actually turn any functional Linux image into a WSL2 thing with some hackery.
There you go. Any other last tweaks?
Do you want to talk about the hardware monitoring a little bit, or
we can if you want?
Just very briefly.
Yeah, I just use fan control for me basically, and then
you're on let's say a proven platform,
maybe more stable. Yeah.
This is N4 chip. People have probably seen some of the news there. So I'm running a lot of hardware monitoring right now. HW info, hardware info still seems to be the gold standard there. It reads every sensor under the sun, so you can pay attention to all of your temperatures and voltages if that's something you need to do.
That sounds fun. That's the thing I would rather not have to do. It turns out,
but it was nice to have, because then I was able to. I set up alerts on the SoC voltage, which is what has been killing these new Ryzens.
Oh,
and BIOS
do the alerts just alert you, or do they actually clock things down?
No, they're just alerts. Okay. As far as I know, I don't think hardware info can control stuff like that. I could be wrong, but BIOS fixes are getting kind of rushed out day by day for these platforms, and some of them are still pretty dubious. So it was nice to be able to set thresholds on those voltages and just say, hey, please freak out if this voltage goes over this threshold and let me know. What else? Have you heard of latency mon?
No, what is that?
So I became aware of it the other day, and then I searched on the Discord, and some of the people on there who are like heavy into AV production stuff seem to endorse it pretty heavily. It's older, but it tracks all causes of latency in a Windows system, essentially at a very low, like at the kernel level, essentially. Like,
oh wow,
I don't remember all the terminology, but like DPC and ISR, I think, are the terms. They have a decent explainer on their site if you care about such things.
I'm gonna go grab that right now. That's
so
very cool.
You let it run for a while, and it will tell you like, hey, this is the driver or the process that is taking the longest to respond, or that is taking up the most kind of kernel time. That might be the point. Is those things might be throwing off things like audio recording or video.
Yeah.
Things that need to happen in real time. Like if you're getting interruptions or dropouts, pops, clicks, whatever there, this is supposed to help you identify what in your system is causing stuff like that. So I just started using it. I have not really figured out how to interpret the results super well yet. But that seems quite useful.
Huh. What else you got?
There's OCCT, which I have not installed yet, but that's apparently kind of what people like for testing memory stability.
That's
now.
The successor to memtest and all those.
I don't know if it's quite the same category as like memtest 86, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
This runs in Windows, and I think it's more Windows centric. I'm not sure I can qualify that statement, but like the types of errors it's looking for are more Windows type errors, I think, rather than low level testing of just reading and writing to the memory.
Cool.
Anyway, like with DDR5 still being new and a little suspect at times, that seems pretty useful to have.
Well, I was going to say I've been doing, I've been undervolting a little bit lately.
Oh.
And having something that would let me do a good stress test that I don't have to boot out of Windows for would be really useful. So I'm going to grab that right now. Yeah,
the name again is OCCT. You can just Google it, but that is exactly what people use it for, is like, hey, can I set the voltage down a little bit on my CPU and still have memory stability? That's the use case for that. So I guess last thing I'll mention, like I grabbed Prime 95 and it didn't even max out my CPU in any fashion.
Did you do the torture test?
Yeah, I set it to the kind of maximal, like go hard on this thing. Like I don't, maybe it's just not updated for newer architectures.
Well, was it? So it made me hit the thermal limit in like 2 seconds.
Interesting. I don't know why. Maybe it's just not aware of the architecture on these Ryzens enough to utilize it properly or something. I don't know. It was only bumping load up to like 60-70%, and I wasn't getting anywhere near maximum temperatures.
Yeah, that's weird. So when I ran that, I hit the wattage limit and then the temperature limit really quickly after each other.
Huh. I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe it just needs to be updated.
So on that front, I've been using Intel provides this thing called the Extreme Tuning Utility that's designed for overclocking. Huh. But you can also use it to undervolt and stuff like that. It runs in the system, and I assume it talks to the MEI, but I don't know for sure. It only lasts till the next reboot. So if you do something that makes your system unstable, it's a nice way to test overclocking or undervolting, to see if you're stable in a way that's pretty foolproof. Because if you bomb out, it'll just revert to stock clocks when you come back, which is nice.
Undervolting is the new overclocking.
The thing I read about. The thing, yeah, I mean, it makes my office cooler. The thing I read about Prime 95 is that people are feeling like it's not a realistic test on the newer processor designs that have the different kind of caches, and like the modern processor design is not, basically it's only, all your testing is if it can run Prime 95, not if it's going to be good workloads.
Yes,
because it's hitting harder than stuff generally does now.
That kind of makes sense. I see you've written kind of like the FirmArc situation here, which I did run FirmArc on this 4090 before I Before I then later found people saying like similar thing, like the way FarmArc works is not really applicable to modern GPUs as much.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Unless you want to get into all the USB audio video issues I'm having, but maybe we'll save that for later. Maybe that's a patron episode.
That's a patron episode. That feels like a patron episode to me. The USB audio video stuff, like so as an update on my machine, the Kraken that was disconnecting and reconnecting, I've mostly fixed by putting a USB hub in between the Kraken and the USB header.
Okay.
It still occasionally does weird shit that I don't exactly understand what the cause is. I'm continuing to work on it though. I talked to Adam about it, and I might come back over and walk them through what I've done and what's changed and what's working. At some point in the not too distant future. But yeah, it's computers are weird, man.
They sure are. You have camera and audio interface running into the gaming machine, or is that going straight into your stream PC?
I have camera and audio interface going into the gaming machine.
Okay.
Because I use the camera that I use for like work meetings and stuff like that is hooked up to the gaming machine.
Okay.
The audio interface that's plugged into this computer is the Motu, and then the streaming machine has a big Behringer mixer, digital mixer plugged into it, which was flawless.
Okay. Well, rather than getting into the esoteric problems I am having, I'm just going to ask, are the camera and audio input working just fine on that machine?
Beautifully, yeah.
Okay. Good to know. I will keep that in mind.
Hold on. It's an Elgato face cam. When I do a cold reboot, I have to unplug and replug the face cam for it to show up in Windows. No idea why.
Okay. That's, you know what, that
I reboot infrequently enough that it's not really an issue.
Compared to some of the stuff I'm running into, that is just fine.
Yeah. I'm going to say pretty minor. But yeah, I guess that'll do it for us this week. We'd love to hear what you all do.
Yeah.
On your new computers. I think that's really useful. If you want to send it to techpod@content.town, or if you're in the Discord, you can just post in this week's episode channel, and we'll maybe collect the best of them, and we'll either run down them at the end of the month or put them on the Patreon episode, because I think people would probably like that.
Yeah, everybody loves tips to make computers work better, because sometimes they need a helping hand.
Yeah, the thing that I've learned having, I've been doing these kinds of stories for 20 years and change now. Every time I do one, people are like, oh man, I got this thing that I do. And I'm like, wow, my mind is literally blown. So there's always some stuff that you've never heard of before in these. And we'll collect the best ones and make another episode somewhere.
For whatever reason, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of people on the Discord building new machines lately.
It's the right time.
Yeah.
Like the hardware's out. Like we've been through this drought for 3 years where it's hard to get video cards or CPUs or motherboards or power supplies or whatever it happened to be. And like memory prices are going way down. Like it's a good time to build a machine right now.
Yeah. I last thing I'll say before we move on, I think I have fully embraced the value of maybe not necessarily buying the last gen hardware, but at least maybe buying toward the end of the current generation once the BIOSes are stable and any production like manufacturing issues have been ironed out.
So this is it's funny. In Maximum PC, people had two frames of mind about that. One was that the hardware was disposable and they would just constantly be upgrading, and if it was unstable, then it was fine. But as I got older and I was using my computer for more work stuff that was important and I couldn't like delay, I began to value, hey, I want whatever my main computer is to be absolutely bulletproof. I want to not have to, like, I love fucking with it when I have time, but I don't want to have to fuck with it to get work. I don't want to have a period of fuckery to get to the point that I can do work. And that never feels good. Yeah.
That idea of like, who cares if it's got stability issues, it'll get upgraded soon. And who cares is kind of, to me, that's kind of the luxury of only playing video games on your computer and not needing to do a ton of work with it.
Yeah. It's funny because that was the change. It was when I wrote the book and I was doing that work mostly at home on the desktop PC, and I couldn't, like, I would lose a night. If I lost a night to writing, I would then have to do 2 days worth of work on the weekend instead of 1 day worth of work on the weekend.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. I think probably from this point forward, I will not buy into a new socket and I will probably wait until close to the release of the next generation to buy into a current one.
I having bought into the last few new kinds of memory, there's downs like you know that memory isn't going to last as long as it would if you bought it 3 years into the production or 4 years into the production of that new process, whatever. But anyway, as always, if you would like to get into the Discord, if you would like to be part of the community, you'd like to support the show, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is 100% listener supported. And you can go to patreon.com/techpod. And for $5 a month, you get access to the patron episodes. You get access to the Discord. We're in there hanging out. I spent last weekend talking about Eurovision with people watching Eurovision.
Yes.
And Eurovision's great. I just want to say, it's like, I love Eurovision. I wish we were part of Eurovision. They will let worldwide viewers vote this year for the first time.
Did they?
Yeah. I didn't bother, but I could have. The option was there.
Who won?
Look, as always, it's a little controversial. Sweden, lovely, heartfelt performance, great song. The young woman definitely did a good song. The Finland guy fucking brought it. Finland and Croatia know what people come to Eurovision for. And they were clear fan favorites.
Even basically having paid no attention to Eurovision this year, I know exactly what the Finland act looked like. I didn't watch a video to hear it, but I can call the singer to mind right now. That was
the
everywhere.
song ripped. The song was real good. Okay. Like it was very like look, this we're talking about a song competition. If people don't know, like it feeds up like the individual member states of the European Broadcasting Union or whatever it is contribute. They run local competitions. The winners of those local countrywide competitions all go up to Eurovision, and there's like a multi-week 3-stage tournament or something to determine who the winner is. You can't vote. There's 2 types of voting. There's like panels that vote, which is where all the drama happens. And then there's also phone in, like app based voting for people who are viewing along at home. You can't vote if you're in Great Britain. You can't vote for the British act. You can only vote for other countries. So it's not like it's about building a collective.
Sure.
Literally, Will Ferrell. There's a Will Ferrell. Oh God, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. It's the woman from she played Regina George on Mean Girls.
Oh, it's not Rachel McAdams, is it?
Rachel McAdams, thank you. There's a movie with them where they play a Eurovision act.
No kidding.
Right?
Oh,
it's fantastic. It's on
by
Netflix.
Name? Like they call it Eurovision?
It's called Eurovision, the legend of whatever the name of their band. And like it is even with an actual parody movie being made about it. Like that movie is not really a parody. It's really a love letter to how fucking delightful and weird Eurovision is.
How have I never heard of it?
Oh,
the name of the movie is Eurovision Song Contest: The Story of Fire Saga.
Yeah, Fire Saga is the name of their band.
Never heard of this.
It's a very stupid movie. It's very good. It accurately captures the things that I like about Eurovision at a really high level. While also being a stupid, like anyway, I think Rachel McAdams is spectacularly funny. Anyway, the point is, we talked about Eurovision last week on the Discord. We were people just hanging out. It's a nice place to hang out.
Yeah, people just like to hang out and talk.
And as we do every week, we thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Brad's Midsize Hoodoo Voodoo, Lacking Inspiration, Octothorpe Bunny Crimes, Just Wedge, Joel Krauska, Twinkie Says Mike B is the GIF Lord, David Allen, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everybody for supporting the show. We do appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
And we will be back. This was a long ass podcast, Brad.
Yeah.
We should probably wrap it up, huh?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I could have sat here for another hour talking about Windows.
Everybody loves Windows. See you all next week, everybody. Bye.